All right, so I'm going to pick the location where I want to start my first swirl, and then we're just going to do that same technique that we drew out, but with a sewing. It's really that simple. Hi, and welcome to Free Motion Basics. I'm Angelique, and in this video, we're going to talk about swirls. I love swirls. They are a go-to free motion quilting design for me. They're great for giving that feeling of creating motion, getting from one place to another, or just an awesome filler design. I have some examples of some swirls to show you first before we get into the ones that we're going to learn about today. We're going to start with a basic swirl, and I have that kind of here, and then I've added some echoing to that. So your swirls can have just a single curve where it echoes around once, or you can echo it several times. Some other swirls include making like viney designs. So you'll see kind of in here that I have some vines that are created by swirls that overlap or nearly overlap each other, and they mix really well with other elements such as leaves. You can even use swirls at the bases of flowers, which is also one of my favorite designs. I did more elongated swirls in this design to create the feeling of ocean currents for this travel bag that I made. Today I'm going to cover how to do basic swirls. I'm also going to cover doing swirls adding a hook element to them, so the swirl and hook as I like to call it. I'm also going to show you how to do elongated swirls, and then probably the most difficult of the designs I'm going to show you today is the concentric swirls, which is really a great filler design, and then lastly the vine swirls. We're going to look at those today. To get a feeling for swirls, we're going to start with the basic swirl. And to help with that, we have created a worksheet that you can download. It will be available with this video here. So you'll see that in each one of these, we have a picture that you can draw directly on, and this is to help you build that muscle memory. And so you're going to start on the more open circle here, the gray circle, and you're just going to follow this around. And what you're trying to get from this is the general feeling for making it, the flow of the design, and you want to do your best to keep from lifting your pen or pencil up from that. And then right below it, you'll find a blank place for you to practice without having the guidelines. And so you'll notice that your swirls will have kind of a big point to them. I have seen swirls where they're a little bit more loopy like that. That's okay as well. It's still kind of the general feel for it. And like I said, you can do echoing around them as you kind of move through the design. So now that we've practiced it, let's head over to our practice quilt and we're going to stitch out some basic swirls. I'm going to be using the regular hopping foot for this one, and as a reminder, be sure that you clean your machine, oil it regularly, check your hopping foot height before getting started. All right, so I'm going to pick the location where I want to start my first swirl. I'm going to drop my needle and pull up my bobbin thread. And then we're just going to do that same technique that we drew out, but with a sewing. I am working on crews for this one, so we're just gonna come around. I can do another one here. You can echo if you'd like a previous swirl. We're just keeping them relatively the same size, going around and coming back that same hook. All right, it's really that simple. Again, practice makes perfect, makes it a lot easier. Throw these in your designs, and I'd love to hear in the comments below your experience with basic swirls and maybe how you've used them. Let's go and do our first change in that by learning how to do the swirl and hook. The swirl with the hook basically starts out the same, so we're going to start on this open circle as our basic swirl, and then I'm going to take a quick stop here so that I can point out this area of your swirl design where it's going to change. And we're changing directions and then continuing with the hook portion, and then we're going to continue with the rest of the swirl just like we did before. So picking that back up, have another swirl, did that one a little bit smaller. Again, there's a brief pause, change direction, and then kind of continue that down. And sometimes you'll look like you have a couple double hooks. It just kind of depends on how big you want your swirl to be in comparison to your hook. And this just creates a different feel to the swirl. You still have that sense of movement, but you also have that little bit harsher element. So we're gonna go practice those hooks and swirls on our frame. I left the machine where it was from our basic swirls, and I'm just gonna continue the pattern, adding the hook element to our design. So again, I'm starting with that basic shape of the hook. I'm taking a pause, and then I am changing directions to make the hook and then overlapping back over the previous swirl. So swirl, pause, add the hook, continue the swirl. Next swirl, curly Q, pause, add the hook. All right, so it's really as simple as that. Notice the difference. Here we have that basic swirl. You'll notice that this is definitely a lot more flowy, a little bit more reminiscent of maybe puffy clouds. And then as we move over into these, we can feel the more sharpness to them, right? And so it definitely changes the feel of it. It's almost viney in a sense, but more dimensional. We're gonna try our next design, which is the elongated swirl. So back to the practice sheet. The elongated swirls look a lot like your basic swirl, except for they have a longer tail to get started on that. They look great when you mix the lengths of your tail, and you're also going to see quite a bit more echoing to really create that feeling of that elongation, to really make it stand out. Sometimes your swirl's going to actually touch and connect to your previous line. Other times it doesn't have to. It's really the feeling that you want to create. But you see that elongation that occurs as we echo around, and then we're going to make a turn there. We're going to start the next one, which we have a little bit smaller version. And then when I'm ready, I want a longer one, I'm going to curl that out. And now we have an example here, how this one doesn't connect. Notice that I echoed around the other one to get moving back down and keep that feeling going. And you'll see sometimes you're going to do some echoing over previous lines to get to where you want to be to create the next swirl. So that's our elongated swirls. Let's go practice those on a quilt. Right, so I went back to where I had left off with the previous one, and I'm just going to extend that out a little bit further. I'm going to bring that first curl in, and then I'm going to bring that back. And I'm going to echo along for a little bit, swirl back, echo along, come around. I think we'll touch here. All right. And then maybe I'll create one going the other way. So we can echo along this side. Do another long tail. And if you don't have space, like you're feeling a little tight on space, you can always turn around at any point to create that next one. This one I won't have touch. As I said, they look great mixing with other swirl designs as well. Finish up this last one. So it's as simple as that. Elongated swirls, they're just fun and flowy. They mix well in different sizes. So let's go back to our handout, and we're gonna work on the hardest design of our basic challenge here today, and that's going to be the concentric swirls. So let's go give that one a try. One of the things I love about concentric swirls is that it adds a change in dimension to the look of your quilt. When you're done, it looks like you have quilted over previous quilting, but you're doing it the opposite way. I'm going to make that first curl, or curly Q, and then in this case I'm going to stitch in the ditch there a little bit. And I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to change colors because this is an area you'll see where I have the red arrows showing you that you're going to backtrack over this same stitch. So I'm going to backtrack back over this as I create the next swirl. I'm also going to backtrack across that portion of my previous swirl to make the next echo. And I'm going to backtrack again over that previous one as I make the next new swirl. So I'm going to stop again because now I have some backtracking across this portion there as I swirl this up. So I'm initially just following the arrows. But one of the things that as we move through, I've removed the arrows so you can start trying to think about how to backtrack on your own to create those designs. So this one we're going to have a larger echo over 2 so that we can get back to a new area. And then sometimes because you're doing this as a filler, you may not have a place for a full design. So you'll just do some arcs there to fill in an area like it had continued through. And like I said, these are definitely more difficult, so I really kind of want to walk you through the entire path just to help you get a feel for how much this is going to change. So let's give that a try in our blank space. So we're going to start with a tight swirl there. Your swirls need to be relatively tight in comparison. You don't want to get too loopy or it's going to make it difficult to get back to where it is that you want to go. So keep those kind of close by. A good 3 to 4 echoes seem to work really well to kind of keep that feeling. So don't be afraid as you're practicing to be like, you know what, that didn't work, and erase a little bit and go back until you really get the feel for what this is going to look like. But as you can see, you get that effect of this one here looking like it is on top of this one. And so you really get more of a 3-dimensional texture. All right, so now that we've practiced this one, let's go try it on the frame. You'll note that I have drawn out a little rectangle pretending like I have a block here because, like I said, it's really a great filler design. So let's go ahead and drop our needles so we can pull up our bobbin. And I'm going to switch to precise mode on this. And the reason I'm doing that is, to be honest, this is, like I said, not the easiest of the designs of the swirls and not one that I use a lot. So I want the precise mode so that the machine will slow down with me as I approach those areas where I have that overlap. So like I said, when you start your first one, you want to make sure your swirls are relatively tight. That's what is really going to kind of help keep those shapes. We're going to do a little backtracking to start the next one. And I'm using those edges that I drew out as sort of my stitch in the ditch lines. I'm creating that echoing, running into like the next one so that it looks like it goes underneath. I'm just going to do kind of a bigger echo there to kind of fill in that space. And now I'll start another swirl. But overall, a really neat looking design. Totally different feel we get from this one compared to the other swirls that we have done in this video. Using just some arcs to fill in where I don't have space for a full swirl. All right, so let me go ahead and fasten off so that we have some space to see. We still have that component of the basic swirl, but the echoing, the stopping in our spacing area, like our block, you just get a completely different texture to the design as that filler and that 3-dimensional effect. All right, so we're gonna go do our last one, which is the swirly vine. So let's go do a quick practice of that. I really like this one because it is a great meander. It has that delicate feel to it for quilts that maybe you want that more delicate feel too. You're gonna do more tracing over the same lines. I often like when it doesn't quite get on that line and you get just a teeny tiny bit of echoing. It creates a more organic feel. So let's give this one a try. So again, starting on the open circle, we're gonna make our first curly cue there, backtracking over it. And you can change directions of these. So like this one, you get a little bit more of an S. And then this one here, you get a little bit more of a backwards 3. Got a couple in the row there that just kind of match up. Again, I think this is probably one of the easier designs because it looks good if you do have that little bit of overlap that isn't perfect. So I think it's a little more forgiving than some of the other designs. Let's go do our last design on the frame. Like I said, with this technique's probably one of my favorites because it's that little bit more delicate look to it. And I'm just going to do some backtracking. You can have my vines going any direction I'd like. I can come back around. If I want, I can only do one swirl before moving a little bit longer and doing another swirl. Just take some of your cues from nature. Really simple design. And I'm just going to end with a tight swirl there so I can end my vine. So vines, really easy to do. So the last thing that I want to show you, and I'm just going to start over here, is just give you some ideas of how you can mix your swirls with other designs. So my bobbin thread is pulled up. I've got in my starting position, and I'm going to start with a basic swirl, and I'm going to add some pebbles with it. This is going to help emphasize the shape of the swirl. And then I can move to the next basic swirl. And if I want to echo that one, I can. And then start adding some of those elements. We're going to add a swirly flower. So you start with a swirl. And then at some point, you're going to come back and you're adding the petals to your flower. You can make the small or large. You can even echo around some of those petals as well. And if I want to fill in, I could add again some more pebbles. So the next one I'm going to do, we're going to do some of those vines that we talked about. We're going to add some elements to that as well. So maybe some leaves. The start of a vine here. And then I want to add a little leaf shape, maybe a couple before the vine moves to the next location. Maybe I want to add a small little flower with it. So very versatile. As you can see, it's a great meander. And I love to end my vines with a little bit of a swirl. Let's do an elongated one where we're going to emphasize the center of the swirl with a large pebble. So we'll start the same way. We're going to come do our curl and come back. And this time, as we approach into the center, we're going to create that pebble. You could also do that at the beginning of your swirl. Just kind of think about where you want that pebble to be. And this one you can see was more open. And then pebbles work really nicely. I know I'm talking about pebbles a lot, but they're just a nice design to fill in areas where you just don't have the space for anything else. And then the last one, just to kind of give you an idea of how you can blend this with other elements, we're going to work on our concentric swirls again. And this time, instead of adding more arcs to kind of fill that in, we can use pebbles to fill in the areas that we don't have room for a full swirl. Start my first swirl. I can just do a few pebbles, kind of ending where I want to create another swirl. Again here, maybe I'd be better adding a couple of pebbles to fill that design in. And I don't have to just stop there. If I want to continue the pebbles around there, I can before adding another swirl. Maybe I echo around that. So just gives it a different feeling and makes a nice filler design as well, so you don't have so much repetition of short little arcs. It's been great having you. Get out there, practice your free motion designs, practice those swirls, and just be creative with it. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that is at The Grace Company. We look forward to seeing you again when we do our next one.